Welcome! Thank you for joining us today for this Suicide Safety and Resilience training. My name is Vera Salzburn and I serve as the Executive Director at Chatham County Safety Net Planning Council, a Savannah-based nonprofit organization that works with community partners to improve health and mental health outcomes of our residents. I am also an applied suicide intervention skills trainer, mindful self-compassion teacher, and trauma-sensitive yoga instructor. We're here today to focus on suicide prevention in schools. We have been working in Chatham County, Georgia since 2017 in partnership with the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System, Gateway Community Service Board, and other diverse community partners. Together, we're implementing evidence-based trainings, including applied suicide intervention skills training and Safe Talk, as well as various resilience-building workshops. While you are here as a part of your mandatory job training, we would like to invite you to take care of yourself emotionally. The subject we're discussing today can be heavy and triggering for some, so please feel free to redirect your attention and ask for help if you experience overwhelm or acute emotional discomfort. This session is aimed at the entire school community because we think that by working together, we can prevent suicide. It is our goal for everyone to know that help is available and where to find it. Learning objectives for this session include: understand the impact of suicide in our community, explore how personal and community beliefs about suicide affect suicide stigma and safety, learn how to take the first steps towards suicide prevention, and contribute to suicide safety in the community. So let's begin with looking at numbers, statistics, which help us better understand the impact of suicide on communities at large as well as individuals. First, we'll look at the bigger picture, national data on suicide, and then gradually we'll narrow it down to state and Chatham County level. According to the latest report by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. In 2022, over 49,000 Americans aged 10 or older died by suicide. The conservative estimate is that for every death by suicide, 25 or more people attempt. In 2022, there were an estimated 1.6 million suicide attempts. In addition to the tremendous emotional cost of suicide, there is also an economic impact in medical costs for individuals and families, lost income for families, and lost productivity for employers. Suicide is a public health problem and leading cause of death in the United States. Suicide can also be prevented. More investment in suicide prevention, education, and research will prevent the ultimately deaths of thousands of Americans each year. This fact sheet reports 2021 data from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, the most current verified data available at the time of publication, January 2024. Reportedly, 1,676 people died by suicide in Georgia in 2021. In the state of Georgia, suicide is the third leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24. Over 4 times as many people died by suicide than in alcohol-related motor vehicle accidents. 51% of firearm deaths were suicides. 67% of all suicides were by firearms. 57% of communities did not have enough mental health providers to serve residents in 2023, according to federal guidelines. Every study that has examined the issue to date has found that within the United States, access to firearms is associated with increased suicide risk. Guns are more lethal than other suicide means. They're quick and they're irreversible. About 85% of attempts with a firearm are fatal. That's a much higher case fatality rate than for nearly every other method. Now, let's take a closer look at Chatham County, the community we live and work in. It is estimated conservatively that in 2022, 1,200 people attempted suicide in Chatham County. Reportedly, 48 people died by suicide. 7 of those deaths were by youth ages 10 to 24. Among those 48 people, 39 were men and 9 were women. Although more men die by suicide due to the type of means they choose, men tend to use firearms more often. Women are 3 times more likely to attempt suicide. This compares to 42 deaths by motor vehicle accidents and 46 deaths by homicide in Chatham County. Each of those 48 individuals had family, friends, co-workers, and others who were impacted by their death. Suicide impacts us all as a community, and these numbers, these people, these lives, tell us that we as a community have a lot of work to do in suicide prevention. So let's take a moment and reflect on suicide's impact in our own lives by thinking through the following questions. Do you know someone who died or might have died by suicide? Do you know someone who injured themselves with suicide in mind? Do you know someone who has or had, or whom you now suspect has or had, thoughts of suicide? Do you know someone, including you, who is or has been personally impacted by suicide? In our suicide prevention work, we see that for many people, the answer to these questions is often a yes. It may be for you as well. For many people, suicide is that S word that they tend to avoid. As a society, we resist talking about suicide for many different reasons. It could be shame and stigma. It could be the heaviness of the subject. It could be the result of a personal experience. Or it could be unconscious. Many people avoid talking about suicide without realizing it. So why should we talk about suicide? Well, because talking about suicide is an effective way of preventing it. By opening the dialogue, sharing our stories, and identifying resources, we can reduce stigma and make it easier for people at risk to come forward and get the help that they need. Before we talk about prevention methods, we'd like to discuss some false ideas associated with suicide. To help someone at risk of suicide, we need to separate myths from facts. That's why it is important to recognize these misconceptions. While there are many myths about suicide, we would like to highlight just 5. Number 1. People who talk about suicide won't really do it. This is false. According to research, as many as 75% of people who attempt suicide do or say something to indicate their state of mind and intentions before they act. Talking about suicide might be a plea for help for those people. Number 2. Talking about suicide may give someone the idea. This is false. Research confirms that asking someone about suicide will not put the idea in their head. In fact, many people having suicidal thoughts often feel relieved when someone asks. Talking about the possibility of suicide can be a first step in obtaining help. Number 3. People who die by suicide were unwilling to seek help. This is false. Studies show that more than half of suicide victims sought professional help within 6 months of their death. On a side note, as we are talking about suicide in the community, to help focus on the person rather than their action, we say that a person died by suicide instead of committed suicide. Please consider using this language. Number 4. If a person is going to attempt suicide, nothing will stop them. This is false. Most people who attempt suicide remain uncertain of their decision until the final moment. Most people who consider suicide do not wish for death. They wish for the pain to stop. Number 5. Anyone who tries to kill him or herself has a mental health condition. This is false. Research shows 54% of people who died by suicide actually did not have a known mental health condition, such as depression. So in fact, anyone with and without mental health conditions could be at risk for suicide. Most people who take their lives exhibit one or more warning signs, either through their talk, behavior, or mood. It is important to look for a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behavior, especially when related to a painful event, loss, or change. Common warning signs include a sense of hopelessness, isolation, aggression and irritability, possession of lethal means, feeling like a burden, drastic mood changes, frequently talking about death, self-harm, engaging in risky behaviors, making funeral arrangements, giving away things, substance abuse, direct threat of suicide, and low self-esteem. Sometimes warning signs may be missed or dismissed. Therefore, it is important to learn suicide risk factors. There are many factors contributing to suicide among those with and without mental health conditions. Environmental factors include financial problems, relationship problems, including bullying, stressful events or loss, criminal legal problems. Historical factors include previous suicide attempts, family history of suicide, childhood abuse, neglect, or trauma. Health factors include chronic illness or pain, brain injury, mental health problems, substance use problems, and others. Let's say you are unable to notice a change of behavior in someone, or you may simply think that they are having a bad day. But if you know that there is one or more risk factors present in a person's life, whether they are struggling at home, have a hard time connecting with their peers, or feel ashamed about something, that in itself is a good reason to have a conversation about suicide. Also, there is no one reason why people become suicidal. Instead, people become vulnerable to suicide due to a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors. For example, people may inherit a tendency to develop a mental illness, or maybe they did not have an opportunity to learn how to cope effectively with stress. People may also experience painful, disturbing, and/or traumatic events that overwhelm the coping mechanism that they have developed. The truth is that people who attempt suicide are in pain, whether it is emotional, physical, financial. They don't see a way out of their pain. They feel overwhelmed, lonely, and hopeless. So our goal is to offer hope and show that help is available. When looking to provide support to someone who might be at risk for suicide, it is important to consider what we call the lethal triad. When there is an upset person who has access to firearm and alcohol or drugs, the risk for suicide tremendously increases. Being a helper means providing emotional support and reducing access to lethal means, as well as drugs and alcohol. In the United States, 2.6 million children live in homes with unlocked firearms that are stored loaded or with ammunition. Children often find or handle firearms in the home without their parents' knowledge. The best way to keep your children safe from guns is to remove all guns from the home. If a gun is in the house, always keep it unloaded and locked. It should be out of reach and sight of children. Keep ammunition and guns locked in separate locations, not together. Before visiting friends and relatives, ask if they have guns in their homes. If so, make sure they keep their guns unloaded and locked as well. Never leave children unsupervised in a home with a gun. A range of factors at the individual, relationship, community, and societal levels can protect people from suicide. We can take action in our schools to support students, teachers, parents, and others, and help protect them from suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Protective factors include life skills, including problem-solving skills and coping skills, and ability to adapt to change. Self-esteem and a sense of purpose or meaning in life. Cultural, religious, or personal beliefs that discourage suicide. Support from parents, friends, and family. Feeling close and connected to others. Feeling physically and emotionally safe at one's school and the neighborhood. Availability of consistent and high-quality physical and behavioral health care. The Trevor Project is the world's largest suicide prevention and mental health organization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and questioning young people. In 2022, it released the National Survey on LGBTQ Youth Mental Health, representing the experiences of nearly 34,000 LGBTQ youth ages 13 to 24 across the United States. According to this survey, 45% of LGBTQ youth seriously considered suicide in the previous year, including more than half of trans and non-binary youth. The survey also pointed at the protective factors for LGBTQ youth. LGBTQ youth who felt high social support from their family reported attempting suicide at less than half the rate of those who felt low or moderate social support. Specifically, LGBTQ youth reported feeling supported by their parent or caregiver when they were welcoming to their LGBTQ friends or partners, talked with them respectfully about their LGBTQ identity, used their names and pronouns correctly, supported their gender expression, and educated themselves about LGBTQ people and issues. Across the board, youth who had access to affirming homes and schools reported much lower rates of attempting suicide. Ultimately, helping a person at risk involves meeting their needs. The TALK model can help you remember the steps when intervening with someone thinking about suicide. T stands for tell. Tell the person that you noticed a change in their behavior, appearance, or mood. Let them know that they can talk to you openly. Remember that your reactions and attitude can influence the intervention, so be patient, persistent, and respectful. A stands for ask. Ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? It communicates that you are open to speaking about suicide in a non-judgmental and supportive way. Ask them directly, clearly, and as soon as you can. Asking in this direct, unbiased manner can open the door for effective dialogue about their emotional pain and can allow everyone involved to see what next steps need to be taken. Do not ever promise to keep their thoughts of suicide a secret. L stands for listen. Make sure that their answers are taken seriously and don't ignore them, especially if they indicate that they are experiencing thoughts of suicide. Listening to their reasons for being in such emotional pain, as well as listening for any potential reasons that they want to continue to stay alive, are both incredibly important when they are telling you what's going on. Help them focus on their reasons for living and avoid trying to impose your reasons for them to stay alive. K stands for keep safe. It is important to find out few things to establish immediate safety. Have they already done anything to kill themselves before talking with you? Does the person experiencing thoughts of suicide know how they would kill themselves? Do they have a specific detailed plan? What's the timing for their plan? What sort of access do they have to their planned method? Do they have access to drugs or alcohol? Who else can be involved as an appropriate helper? The more helpers, the better. What other resources are available? Columbia's Suicide Severity Rating Scale is a short questionnaire that can be administered quickly by responders with no formal mental health training. It is relevant in a wide range of settings and for individuals of all ages. The scale can be a useful tool for guiding a conversation about suicide. To get a copy of the scale, please visit cssrs.columbia.edu. Creating a safety plan is an important part in suicide prevention and intervention. A safety plan is a prioritized list of coping strategies and sources of support. It can help you identify what leads your thoughts of suicide and how to feel better when you're having these thoughts. As a result, you can help yourself to stay safe for now. MySafetyPlan.org offers a simple online tool and a downloadable safety plan template that can be used by individuals and their helpers. A safety plan is created to be used in a crisis. Having it written down and planned out in advance means that you will have it ready if a crisis happens. A safety plan is not a replacement for therapy or professional help. It is a reminder to use available resources and get help when needed. Research has firmly established that family members of individuals who die by suicide including parents, children, and siblings, are at increased risk of suicide. They are often referred to as survivors of suicide. Picture a suicide death as a pebble dropped in a pond. While the first and biggest waves hit the family and those closest to the decedent, the impact spreads outward to the others exposed to the death, such as friends, witnesses, first responders, treatment providers, and colleagues. A suicide death can affect those beyond the immediate loss survivors and ripple outward, impacting others and even an entire community. Knowing your resources and where to find help is essential in suicide prevention and for promoting healing after a suicide death. Supporting people affected by suicide requires empathy, understanding, and a willingness to provide both emotional and practical assistance. Here are some ways to offer support. Listen without judgment. Create a safe and non-judgmental space for the person to express their feelings and thoughts about the suicide. Listen attentively and validate their emotions without trying to offer immediate solutions. Respect their grief process. Understand that everyone grieves differently and at their own pace. Respect the person's coping mechanisms and allow them to express their grief in their own way, whether through tears, anger, or silence. Provide practical help. Offer practical assistance with daily tasks, such as cooking, cleaning, or running errands. These tasks can feel overwhelming for someone grieving a loss, and having support with them can be greatly appreciated. Encourage self-care. Encourage the person to prioritize self-care activities such as getting enough rest, eating healthily, exercising, and engaging in activities they enjoy. Be mindful of triggers. Be mindful of triggering topics or situations that may worsen the person's grief. Respect their boundaries and be cautious about discussing the death unless they initiate the conversation. Connect them with resources. Help the person connect with support groups, counseling services, or hotlines specializing in suicide bereavement. Seek support for yourself. Supporting someone affected by suicide can also take a toll on your own mental health. Make sure to seek support for yourself from friends, family, support groups, or a therapist if needed. By offering compassionate and understanding support, you can help people affected by suicide navigate their grief and begin to heal. If you or someone you know is experiencing a crisis, including thoughts of suicide, here is a list of free 24/7 crisis services to contact. Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Call, text, or chat. The website for the crisis line is 988lifeline.org. Crisis Text Line. Text TALK or HELP to 741-741. Local resources include Gateway Behavioral Health Crisis Center, located at 2121 East Duran Avenue, Savannah, Georgia. Gateway's phone number is 912-417-9484. You can also visit your primary care provider, local psychiatric hospital, local walk-in clinic, local emergency department, and local urgent care center. The 988 Lifeline provides 24/7 free and confidential support for people in distress, prevention and crisis resources for you or your loved ones, and best practices for professionals in the United States. It also offers services in multiple languages. Let's watch a 3-minute video that provides more information about 988.
Suicide does not see race, does not see ethnicity. It happens in every single race, ethnic population that exists. It is increasing, and we need to come together to actually make a difference.
The greatest impact would be just having a heart for people, just knowing who you're talking to, getting to know that person, and basically not trying to solve their problem, but trying to get them to see that it's not as bad as they think it is.
In 2005, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number was initiated. It was the idea of a man who actually lost his wife to suicide after she was dealing with postpartum depression. And it was his vision that people would not have to search for the local number in their community to call. 988 is built on that same foundation.
So now the big thing that we all have to remember, like when we're providing services to folks in crisis, is that crisis is completely self-defined. If you're wondering if you should call, you should probably call.
So when a person calls 988, they're connected to a crisis counselor. And that crisis counselor is trained and is able to provide support.
A caller can expect to discuss alternatives to suicide, talk about coping skills, talk about resources, and ways to move forward beyond the call.
When you call on behalf of somebody else, what we do is we take every call like a crisis. So we ask questions about who they're concerned about, but we're also at the same time providing emotional support to the third-party caller as well.
So there are a number of misconceptions about crisis chat and text. The conversations, they're not scripted. There are things that we might need to assess for. There might be steps we need to cover. But the conversation itself has the potential to be just as authentic, just as human between two people as any other medium for communication.
When people are having one of the worst days of their life, they can call us, they can chat, they can text. And when they come out on the other side, they're feeling better.
Life is hard. Being a human is hard. And we all go through things and struggle. And if in my job I can provide one person with a safe space to talk and get the support they need, then that's a great job for me that day. So.
There is a lot of people out there that are struggling with suicidal thoughts and that are struggling with suicidal behavior, that are struggling with hopelessness and depression and anxiety. It is normal. And you don't have to feel ashamed for having those experiences, and there is help available.
The Savannah-Chatham County Public School System Wellness Center was developed to implement strategies and activities aimed at enhancing the health and wellness of students, faculty, and staff within the school district. The goals of the Wellness Center include assist in conducting wellness and/or mental health assessments for students, faculty, and staff, providing resources, support, and information using trauma-informed, culturally responsive, and developmentally appropriate strategies that support wholeness and wellness, and providing information and resources for students, faculty, and staff within the school district through quarterly workshops, newsletters, and other communication channels. The center is located at 415 Goebel Avenue, Savannah, Georgia. Hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday. You may also follow the center on social media, Facebook and Instagram. The staff is comprised of a wellness coordinator and 2 wellness counselors under the auspices and in collaboration with the Director of Counseling Services. The contact information for the Wellness Center employees is on your screen. Services provided by the Wellness Center include serious threat consultations with school staff. These are for students who have demonstrated harm to self or harm to others. The purpose of these consultations is to assess the nature of the serious threat to determine the best course of action and next steps. It is important to note that a student must be assessed by a Wellness Center staff member or a community provider and issued a signed clearance to return to school. Serious threat assessments for students are by appointment only. Supporting Our Students, or SOS program, provides serious threat assessments and individual counseling. Referrals for serious threat assessments and individual counseling can be made by a principal, assistant principal, dean of students, school counselor, or school social worker. In most instances, the school counselor or school social worker make the referrals. The hours of services for this program are Monday to Thursday from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Wellness Learning Day is a professional development day for all employees in the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System to participate in robust and high engagement sessions and activities that encompass the 8 dimensions of wellness: social, emotional, intellectual, physical, financial, spiritual, occupational, and environmental. Wellness learning series include topics such as nutrition, physical fitness, working with students with trauma, and mental health topics. An Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, is available for the employees of the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System. You can reach Lifestyle Management Group, your EAP, by calling 912-429-6981 or 912-429-2596. An EAP is a company-sponsored benefit designed to help employees and their families address problems that can compromise personal satisfaction and occasionally job performance. It's professional. Performance management counselors are fully licensed and professionals who have the clinical training and experience to help you and members of your family. It's confidential. Per state and federal law, your use of the EAP is confidential. No information will be shared with anyone without your written permission. It's free and informal. There is no charge to you or your family members for initial evaluation and brief counseling. If your problem goes beyond the scope of our program, you will be referred to resources that are covered by your insurance or based on ability to pay. In the case of a student who has made serious threats to or who has attempted suicide, unless the attempt requires immediate emergency assistance, the parents should be called immediately and requested to take the child for assessment and evaluation by a qualified professional. If the parents refuse to report to the school or do not seek evaluative assistance, a report should be made to the Department of Family and Children Services. Campus police and the school social worker should be called for assistance, and the student should not return to school without documentation of a professional assessment. And now I invite you to please take a few moments and read the Child Abuse and Neglect policy on your screen. Once the student returns to school, a re-entry conference is required. The goal is to meet with the parent, administration, and student to develop a plan on how the school will support the student. This may include a crisis plan, a written plan that includes strategies to use during a crisis to de-escalate the crisis and provide positive support to the student. The crisis plan should also include who is responsible for each strategy and should be a collaborative effort. Social-emotional learning lessons to help students develop skills they need for life. Check-ins with the school counselor to assess the student's well-being and determine if the student is in need of more academic and/or social-emotional support. Peer support group, usually based on the same range and similar interests, to develop a sense of identity. Mentoring to provide support, advice, and experience to a student to help them progress. Mediation intervention between two parties, with a neutral third party to assist in resolving conflict. Multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, to start, change, or advance academic and/or behavioral strategies to best address a student's needs. And finally, individualized educational plan and 504 amendments. If the student is not making academic and/or behavioral progress toward the goals that are established, or if the student has met all goals and requires new ones. Thank you for completing this webinar in suicide safety and resilience. If you have any questions about this program, please reach out by email at assist@chlink.org, call 912-661-0577, or visit our website at preventsuicidechatham.org. Take care. Goodbye.